Saturday mornings in 1970 were about to get a whole lot wilder. 4 British teenagers with wings and antennae appeared on our television screens, living in a psychedelic forest and making music that still echoes through the halls of nostalgia. So here are the Bugaloos 1970, 10 wild facts you didn't know. Number 10. Phil Collins almost changed television history. Before he was drumming for Genesis or singing In the Air Tonight, a 19-year-old Phil Collins auditioned for the Bugaloos. The year was 1970, and the Croft brothers, Sid and Marty, along with executive producer Cy Rose, traveled to England in spring with ambitious plans. They wanted to create what they called the British version of the Monkees, and they needed 4 talented young performers who could sing, dance, and act. The auditions attracted over 5,000 hopefuls from all over the United Kingdom. Young people showed up from every corner of Britain, each dreaming of landing one of the 4 coveted roles. Every auditionee had to demonstrate their abilities across all 3 disciplines. It wasn't enough to just sing well or dance well. The Crofts needed performers who could handle the demands of a weekly television show that combined music, comedy, and fantasy elements. Phil Collins made it all the way to the final 3 candidates for the role of IQ, the guitar-playing Grasshopper, who served as the band's leader. The other finalist standing alongside Collins was John Reid, who would later become Elton John's manager and a major force in the music industry. Scottish musician John McIndoe ultimately won the part, beating out 2 people who would go on to shape rock and roll history in very different ways. Years later, McIndoe reflected on this twist of fate with humor. He joked about how rock history might have changed if either Collins or Reid had gotten the role instead. Whenever he ran into them at industry events, he'd playfully remind them that they were lucky they didn't get the part. Just imagine Phil Collins in antennae and wings, singing about Tranquility Forest instead of drumming for one of progressive rock's most influential bands. The timeline of music could have taken a very different turn. Number 9. The Bugaloo buggy was a Hollywood legend. That colorful dune buggy the Bugaloos drove around Tranquility Forest wasn't just any vehicle. It was custom-built by George Barris, the same legendary car designer who created the original Batmobile for the 1960s Batman series. In Hollywood, if you needed a memorable vehicle for television or film, George Barris was the man you called. Barris designed the Bugaloo buggy using a Barris Fun Buggy 4-passenger fiberglass body as his base. He shaped it into a distinctive hockey stick silhouette that perfectly matched the show's whimsical nature aesthetic. The buggy came complete with 2 large butterfly wings that actually flapped. Since the show's concept involved characters who could fly, it made perfect sense that their vehicle would have the same capability. Twin screws were installed under the rear body for high-powered water sporting, allowing the buggy to theoretically work on water as well as land. The attention to detail was remarkable. Oversized headlights looked like the eyes of a bug, staying true to the insect theme. The taillights were tunneled portholes that illuminated at night. Wide oval Firestone tires were installed on Anson one-piece sprint wheels. Inside the vehicle, each of the 4 Bugaloos had their own individualized bucket seat with leaf-like design elements that continued the nature theme throughout the interior. The car was fitted with 4 Capital Communications telephones, 1 for each character. There were also 4 Muntz stereo tape cartridge players with individual earphones, so each Bugaloo could listen to their own music. A 4-tone horn was installed, with each character having their own distinct sound. The buggy was fully street legal and used extensively during filming. After the show ended, the Bugaloo buggy had quite an adventure of its own. It was sold at a Cars of the Stars collector car auction in September 1983. From there, it spent time in a Spanish museum before being sold to another collector in 1990. In 1993, the buggy was placed in underground storage in France, where it remained hidden away for over a decade. Finally, in 2007, the buggy was auctioned again and purchased by collector Gary Hillman in London. Hillman undertook a full restoration, even building new wings and getting them fully working. He later said the car really looked like it came alive when the wings started flapping. In April 2009, the Bugaloo buggy appeared at a car show in Sweden, and George Barris himself attended the event to sign the vehicle and celebrate this reunion with his creation. Number 8. Martha Raye got the role from playing another witch. Martha Raye's performance as the villainous Benita Bazaar came about because of another Croft production. In 1970, she appeared in the H.R. Pufnstuf movie as the Boss Witch, a role that allowed her to showcase her comedic timing and theatrical presence. Her energetic and over-the-top performance in that film impressed Sid and Marty Krofft so much that they immediately knew she was perfect for their next project. By 1970, Martha Raye was already a show business veteran with an incredible career behind her. Born in 1916, she had performed in vaudeville, starred in films during Hollywood's golden age, entertained troops during World War II, the Korean War, and the Vietnam War, and had made countless television appearances. She brought decades of performance experience to the role of Benita Bazaar, and it showed in every scene. Executive producer C. Rose later said in interviews that Martha Raye was absolutely wonderful to work with on the show. She brought incredible life and energy to the character of the jealous, feather-obsessed antagonist who lived in a giant jukebox. Benita Bazaar wasn't just any villain. She was a failed celebrity, desperate to be a successful and popular singer. She envied the Bugaloos for two things: their natural musical talent and their ability to fly. Raye played that jealousy with comedic perfection, making Benita both menacing and hilarious at the same time. Her character lived in a high-rise jukebox in the forest and used it to broadcast her own brand of blaring, obnoxious music. She employed a German-accented chauffeur named Funky Rat, performed by Sharon Baird and voiced by Walker Edmiston. Her two bumbling henchmen were Woofer and Tweeter, anthropomorphic stereo speakers performed by Joy Campbell and Van Snowden. These characters were physical representations of audio equipment which perfectly fit the show's music theme. Benita also had a powerful weapon at her disposal: the stereo zapper. This ultrasonic device could render anyone unconscious in seconds. Throughout the series, she came up with elaborate, unsuccessful schemes to either destroy or enslave the Bugaloos. Fortunately, her schemes never caused permanent harm. Number 7. The Star Trek Enterprise Bridge was their hangout spot. Behind the scenes at Paramount Studios, where the Bugaloos filmed on stages 19 and 21, there was an unexpected perk for the cast. Directly behind Benita Bazaar's jukebox set sat the abandoned USS Enterprise Bridge from the original Star Trek series, which had ended its 3-season run in 1969. The Star Trek set pieces were still there, gathering dust but intact. During their downtime between takes, the boys who played the Bugaloos, John McIndoe, Wayne Larriea, and John Philpott, liked to hang out on the famous sci-fi set. Imagine these young British actors, still wearing their insect antennae and wings, sitting in Captain Kirk's chair or standing at Spock's science station. It's one of those perfect Hollywood moments where the psychedelic world of flying bug children intersected with the future of space exploration, all on the same soundstage. For the cast, it must have been surreal. They were working on a show that was already strange and wonderful, living in a fantasy forest with talking grapes and a witch in a jukebox. And during their breaks, they could step into the command center of television's most famous starship. Number 6. The show switched from film to videotape to save money. The Bugaloos marked a significant turning point in how the Krofft brothers produced their shows. While H.R. Pufnstuf had been shot on film, giving it a cinematic quality, the Kroffts decided to switch to videotape for the Bugaloos to cut costs. This was their first show to use the less expensive format, though it resulted in lower quality picture compared to film. The economics of television production in the early 1970s were challenging, especially for independent producers like the Krofts. Film was expensive to buy, process, and edit. Videotape offered immediate playback and didn't require development, making it cheaper and faster to work with. The brothers were still relatively new to the television production business. H.R. Pufnstuf had been their first major success, and they were learning as they went. By switching to videotape, they could produce more content for less money, which helped keep the show on the air and allowed them to maintain the elaborate sets, costumes, and puppetry that made their production so memorable. This cost-cutting measure would become standard practice for many of their future productions throughout the 1970s. Despite the lower video quality, the show's colorful sets and costumes still made an impact on Saturday morning audiences. The bright, saturated colors actually worked well on videotape, even if the overall image didn't have the same depth and richness that film provided. For kids watching on television sets in 1970, the difference probably didn't matter much. The fantasy world of Tranquility Forest was just as magical whether it was captured on film or tape. Number 5. Billy Barty started his Croft career as Sparky. Billy Barty, the talented actor who stood 3 feet 9 inches tall, made his first appearance in the Croft universe playing Sparky the Firefly. Unlike the 4 Bugaloos who wore lightweight antennae and wings over their regular clothes, Barty wore a full Firefly costume that covered his entire body. Walker Edmiston provided Sparky's voice, giving the character a timid yet lovable personality. Sparky was more than just a sidekick. He was the Bugaloo's friend whom they had taken in, and he often helped them out of tight spots. However, just as frequently, Sparky got himself into trouble that required the Bugaloos to rescue him. One of his defining characteristics was his fear of flying, which was ironic for a firefly. Sparky claimed that flying made him dizzy and caused him to crash. This physical comedy element gave Billy Barty plenty of opportunities to showcase his performance skills within the confines of the costume. This was the beginning of a long and fruitful relationship between Billy Barty and the Croft brothers. He would go on to play many characters in their various productions throughout the 1970s. Most notably, he starred as the beloved Sigmund Ooze in Sigmund and the Sea Monsters, a show about a friendly sea monster who befriends 2 human boys. Barty's ability to bring warmth and personality to characters wearing elaborate costumes made him invaluable to the Croft's particular brand of fantasy television. Van Snowden, who performed the character Tweeter on the Bugaloos, also began a lasting relationship with the Crofts that would span decades. According to Marty Krofft, Snowden was the only puppeteer who survived all of their projects. His reliability and skill made him indispensable, and he eventually became their puppet captain and head puppeteer for productions in the 1980s. He even made an appearance as Pufnstuf himself on a 2007 episode of My Name is Earl. Number 4. The theme song writers were hit-making legends. The Bugaloos theme song had serious pedigree behind it. Norman Gimbel wrote the lyrics while Charles Fox composed the music. These two weren't just writing catchy tunes for Saturday morning television, they were legitimate hitmakers who worked across multiple genres and mediums. Norman Gimbel was one of the most successful lyricists of the 20th century. His career spanned decades, and he had a remarkable ability to write words that connected with audiences. Charles Fox was equally talented as a composer, with a gift for melody that made songs instantly memorable. Together, they formed one of the most successful songwriting partnerships in entertainment history. Just 3 years after writing the Bugaloos theme, Gimbel and Fox created Killing Me Softly with his song, which became a massive hit for Roberta Flack in 1973. The song won Grammy Awards and became one of the defining ballads of the decade. It's been covered countless times since then, including a famous version by the Fugees in 1996. The fact that the same men who wrote about flying bug children in Tranquility Forest also wrote one of the most beautiful and emotionally powerful songs of the 1970s shows their incredible range. They also wrote the theme songs for Happy Days, that nostalgic look back at the 1950s that became one of television's biggest hits. They penned the themes for Laverne and Shirley and The New Adventures of Wonder Woman. Each of these songs became instantly recognizable and helped define their respective shows. They wrote I Got a Name for Jim Croce, which appeared in the film The Last American Hero and became one of Croce's signature songs. Having songwriters of this caliber work on the Bugaloos elevated the show's music beyond typical children's programming. The songs had real craft behind them, with memorable melodies and lyrics that actually meant something. The show's music director, Hal Jorgler, wrote many of the other songs featured on the series and produced the Bugaloos album, released by Capitol Records in 1970. Years later, in 1995, the band Collective Soul recorded a cover of the Bugaloos theme for a tribute album called Saturday Morning, Cartoon's Greatest Hits, produced by Ralph Saul for MCA Records. This album featured alternative rock bands of the 1990s covering classic cartoon themes. Number 3. The Bugaloos had a minor Billboard hit. The 4 British actors who played the Bugaloos weren't just pretending to be a rock band. They actually recorded a real album for Capitol Records while the show was on the air. This was something new for the Croft brothers. They hadn't been able to merchandise their previous shows to this extent, but with the Bugaloos, they decided to go all in on making the band feel as authentic as possible. The album was recorded in a proper studio setting, featuring professionally produced versions of songs from the series. Unlike the show performances, which were filmed on sound stages with the actors lip-syncing, these were actual studio recordings where the cast members provided their own vocals. The album contained 11 tracks in total, giving fans a chance to hear the Bugaloos' music anytime they wanted, not just during Saturday morning broadcasts. The track listing showed the variety of music featured on the show, songs like For a Friend, Senses of Our World, Castles in the Sand, and It's What's Inside That Counts represented different musical styles, from folk rock to pop ballads. One interesting detail is that the song Just the Memory Stays Around appeared only on the album and never in any episode of the television series. Capitol Records decided to release a single from the album to test the commercial waters. They chose For a Friend as the A-side, backed with The Senses of Our World on the B-side. The single was released with the Capitol catalog number 2946. On December 18th, 1970, For a Friend appeared on the Billboard chart at number 118. While it wasn't a top 40 smash that dominated radio playlists, reaching number 118 on Billboard was still a genuine achievement. It showed that the Bugaloos could compete as a real musical act beyond just being characters on a Saturday morning show. For the 4 young British actors, seeing their song on the actual Billboard chart must have been thrilling. They weren't just playing rock stars on television. They had become legitimate recording artists, at least for a moment. The album was later re-released on CD, first in Japan in January 2000 by Vivid Sound, and then in 2006 by Cherry Red Records in London. These re-releases came decades after the original LP, showing that there was still a market for the Bugaloos' music among nostalgic fans. Number 2. A miscommunication killed the second season and movie. The Bugaloos seemed destined for more success after its first season. The show had found an audience, the music was resonating with viewers, and NBC was happy with the ratings. After the first season wrapped production, the Croft brothers wanted to shoot a second season. They also had a movie deal in the works with Columbia Pictures, which would have given the Bugaloos the big screen treatment like they had done with H.R. Pufnstuf. Everything appeared to be moving forward smoothly. Then, disaster struck in the form of a simple miscommunication. There was a breakdown in communication between the Crofts and the 4 British actors who played the Bugaloos. The cast members, John McIndoe, Caroline Ellis, Wayne Laurier, and John Philpott, thought they were finished with their contracts after completing the first season's 17 episodes. Following the production wrap, they returned to the United Kingdom in December 1970, likely eager to see their families and friends after months of working in Los Angeles. Meanwhile, the Croft brothers expected the actors to stay in California or at least remain available for the next season. They had plans for more episodes and were actively working on the movie deal. When they realized the cast had gone back to England, they must have been shocked. By the time everyone understood what had happened, it was too late to fix the situation. The actors were back home, contracts had expired, and the window for producing a second season had closed. This wasn't just an inconvenience, it was a show killer. Unlike animated series where voice actors can be replaced without viewers necessarily noticing, the Bugaloos depended entirely on these 4 specific performers. Their chemistry, their voices, their looks. Everything was tied to these particular people. Finding replacements would have been impossible without completely changing the show's dynamic. As a result, the potential second season was scrapped entirely. The 17 episodes that had been produced remained the only Bugaloos episodes ever made. To make matters even worse, Columbia Pictures went bankrupt, shelving the movie plans permanently. The show only aired original episodes during the 1970 to 1971 season on NBC. Reruns continued through 1971 to 1972, giving the network another year of Saturday morning programming from those same 17 episodes. Later, from 1978 to 1985, the series aired in daily syndication as part of the Croft Superstars package, along with 6 other Croft shows. This syndication run introduced the Bugaloos to a whole new generation. It's one of those what-if moments in television history. What if the communication had been clearer? We might have had multiple seasons of the Bugaloos, a feature film, maybe even more albums. Instead, we got one perfect season that ended too soon. Number 1, the show used adult laugh tracks against the Crofts' wishes. Like many children's shows of the era, the Bugaloos featured a laugh track. Pre-recorded laughter added during post-production to tell viewers when something was supposed to be funny. However, this wasn't something the Croft brothers originally wanted. It was a point of contention during production, representing a philosophical difference about how to treat their young audience. Executive producer C. Rose, who had extensive experience with sitcoms, felt strongly that adding a laugh track would help children know when to laugh. He believed it was necessary for the show's success. Sid Croft later commented in interviews that they were initially against using canned laughter. The Crofts had more respect for their audience's intelligence and thought kids would know when something was funny without being told. But C. Rose turned out to be right, at least from a practical standpoint. As Marty Krofft explained years later, the bottom line was unfortunate but true. You had to tell audiences when something was funny, especially in a comedy format. Viewers at home, both children and adults, had been programmed by years of television to expect hearing laughter during comedy shows. Without a laugh track, comedies were in big trouble because audiences wouldn't respond the same way. The absence of laughter created an uncomfortable silence that made even genuinely funny moments feel flat. This was particularly true for children's programming in 1970. Kids watching at home alone, without siblings or friends to laugh with, needed that audio cue to understand the show's comedic rhythm. The laugh track created a sense of community, as if the viewer was part of an audience enjoying the show together. Cast members Caroline Ellis and John Philpott discussed the laugh track years later while recording DVD commentary in 2006, looking back at the show they had made more than 3 decades earlier. Ellis admitted she was never a fan of American canned laughter. As a British performer, she found the approach heavy-handed. She noted that sometimes the laugh track seemed too much, too loud, or too frequent. However, she acknowledged that it did help create the right atmosphere for reactions. Philpott, also British, noted the cultural difference between UK and US television audiences. He pointed out that, unlike their counterparts in the United Kingdom, American viewing audiences at the time had become completely accustomed to hearing laughter during comedies. He observed that people found themselves genuinely laughing more when they were prompted to laugh along with the canned laughter. This debate about laugh tracks would continue for decades in television production. Today, most modern comedies don't use them. But in 1970, for a show like The Bugaloos that was already asking viewers to accept flying bug children and talking grapes, perhaps that little extra help from a laugh track wasn't such a bad thing. The Bugaloos flew into our lives for just 1 season, but those 17 episodes created memories that have lasted over 5 decades. From Phil Collins's near miss with television stardom to George Barris's incredible custom buggy, from Billboard chart success to backstage hangouts on the Star Trek bridge, the show was filled with moments that seemed almost too wild to believe. The British Bug Children brought music, color, and pure Saturday morning joy to 1970, giving us a glimpse into Tranquility Forest that we've never quite forgotten. If you enjoyed these wild facts about the Bugaloos, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more nostalgic deep dives into the shows that shaped our childhoods. Drop a comment below and tell us your favorite Bugaloo moment or which character you loved most. Until next time, keep those memories alive.